So this lovely figure is the Shuten Douji Festival Portrait version by Q, one of my most anticipated figures of the year, being both a fan of her character and the outfit that she's wearing. Essentially, her attire is that of a Jiangshi, a Chinese vampire. Now, whether or not you're familiar with the folklore, it's likely you've seen a character like this before, such as Shenko from the Darkstalkers series. Probably the most well-known video game Jiangshi, despite how dead that series may be. It's where I grew my appreciation for the design, as she's one of my favorite fighting game characters of all time, so needless to say that this figure was a match made in heaven for me. But what about the curious onlooker? How does this figure stack up? Honestly, it's brilliant, and I'm trying really hard not to be biased here, but Q delivered one of my favorite figures of the year, 2022 that is, with such spectacular sculpt work and phenomenal paint and detailing that it's hard to believe that this figure can be found for just around or under 20,000 yen. With how horrible prices for figures are these days, and they're only getting worse, you might want to think about picking this one up while you can, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. This is starting to sound like an outro for one of my reviews, so let's take a step back and start talking about the figure. In fact, let's just ask the question, why would you want this figure? Because there's already two excellent Shuten Douji PVC scales on the market, both in her more standard, more universally recognized design, and Q knocked their first figure out of the frickin' park. Well, outside of the obvious, like just wanting a variant on a character you love, or perhaps resonating with this design more, this fresh spin on Shuten Douji just brings a few elements to the table that you won't find on the other figures. Because she's really playing into the role, the stiffness of a Jiangshi is on full display, making for a uniquely cute and slightly creepy sculpt that plays to her strengths. The dress brings familiar colors with bold finishes while showcasing design elements you won't often find anywhere else, and most importantly, this figure is a celebration of Shuten Douji's sensual legs. Now, assembly for this figure, as you already saw, was smooth as butter. There is very little you need to attach onto the figure, but for each piece you do, everything fits snugly and securely without ridiculous force needed. Her hat also has magnets to keep it snug on her head, so it's not falling off under any normal circumstance, though can also be very easily removed should you prefer her without it, but I sure as hell don't. While the long paper talisman obscures her face slightly and forced me to move my typical lighting for this review so you could see her face better, the hat's look is too strong of a design element for me to take away from her. The slight fluttering of the talisman makes sure you can still see her eyes and bangs, and the feather you place on top of it is so beautiful it's ridiculous. Shuten Douji has a very sultry expression, as you would expect from her, eyes slightly squinting seductively your way lined in red eyeliner, and a cheeky wide smile with a fang poking through. But something you might not have noticed or even thought about is actually being able to see her ears and eyebrows on this figure. The style her hair is done in and the parting of her bangs thanks to her oh so sexy Oni horns allows this to be the case. Pickle eyebrows and slightly pointy ears. You never really know what you're missing until you finally find it, I suppose. But to think we were missing out on such exquisite details, it's almost heartbreaking. But man, this face is truly perfect to me. I don't really know how they can improve it in my eyes. So there's two main types of finishes on this figure, matte and metallic, typically reserved to a specific color. For example, the various shades of purple from her hair and dress are all matte, and as you would expect, have that top level shading applied throughout. And while there are elements such as her horns or the feather that go for a glossy finish instead, the finer details of her outfit, that flair being brought to the table, all have this eye-catching shimmer to them thanks to the metallic paints. Her dress is in a familiar Chinese style, though in order to emphasize the length and shape of her legs, the front portion is cut extremely short, whereas the back flows all the way down to her ankles, giving us a full viewing of the curves of her thighs and calves. This crease right here, yeah, that's the cherry on top. The implication of no panties is a necessity to bringing out the potential of this leg sculpt. But should you look closer, she is actually wearing some sort of black thong. It's kind of like the other Shuten Douji figure where you can't really make heads or tails of it, so best to just use your imagination. But anyway, the legs are only so attractive because we have this gorgeous dress to go alongside them. The curvature of the tail really keeps your eyes focused within the body of the figure where the legs lie, and each time your eyes drift off, you're greeted with these vibrant, bold bursts of color. Along the trim of the dress is a familiar gold. Her collar is a bright magenta. The clips and pins, which have these nice swirly patterns to them, are colored in a light shade of blue, which might just be my favorite color found on this figure, but most importantly, I'd say the application of metallic red is where the painting style shines the most, as it's reserved for some of her most striking design features. Now, there's technically two types of metallic red, a lighter, almost pinkish red, and a very rich, deep red. The bottom portion of her dress has a cloud-like swirl pattern found on it, which features the lighter red, a pattern and color scheme that can also be found on her hat actually. Both the design and the colors are perfect and strong examples of the clean execution of this figure actually, but her fingernails are that bright red that really want your attention and bring focus to one of the more stylish and distinctive features of her dress. As you reach her elbows, the sleeves start to fill out with numerous layers of frills, engulfing her arms entirely and only allowing you to see her hands in this massive sea of fabric. Along the cuffs of the sleeves is this really awesome repeating pattern of golden rings filled in with red paint. In conjunction with the frills, they both really accentuate how oversized and unique this sleeve design is here. But the hands still manage to steal your attention just due to how overly detailed they are. It's really impressive how clean the fingernail paint at this size is, and the shape of her knuckles and fingers just shows a level of dedication to the craft. They give you a slight uneasiness due to the length and curves of each finger. If you like finer details, then this is the figure for you. Upon further inspection, you can actually see the definition of her stomach and chest through the dress, which is just nice. But we gotta talk about her sash. It's got such a fantastical pathing to it. It's flowing and swirling down her legs in like a slightly ethereal way. The candy red finish on such a large surface area boldly contrasts against both the dress and her pale skin complexion, and it ends off to the side with this large teal ring. It's beautiful, and it also ends up giving this figure a larger shelf presence than you might assume at first. She's also got these little ribbons and bells tied to her ankles, which are just cute as hell, though be careful around the bells when handling this figure as they feel a tad fragile. The only red that isn't metallic is found on the bundle of wooden sticks you attach to her back. The tying rope keeping them all together does end off with like a golden double crest symbol though, so you're still getting a mix of finishes here too. Oh, and I suppose the base is also not metallic. Well, actually that's a lie. The golden pattern is, if you count that, but it's topped in gloss. You know, I didn't even say anything about the base, but it's fantastic too. It's simple in nature, but gorgeous in execution. Perfect colors, perfect size, no complaints here. It's no surprise that both Shuten Douji figures look great and even complement each other by being paired up. There's like slight size differences between the two, which really just boils down to how each figure was based off of specific official art. The festival portrait version looks slightly taller with a bigger head, whereas the third Ascension's got slightly thicker thighs and is also way heavier. Her size is nice though, it works really well within the 1/7 scale, and I think she would pair up nicely with other Fate characters obviously, or designs with somewhat darker palettes. Every inch of this figure, I think, was handled basically perfectly. The individual components are strong, but combined create something truly special. The balances of tones and finishes are mesmerizing, and the theming is captivating. Her expression and slender body sculpt are alluring. What's probably most impressive is how clean the entire paint job is, especially the metallic paint. Some of these pieces are quite small, and to avoid any bleeding, any excess paint where it shouldn't be whatsoever, is a feat in itself. I can understand this figure not being for everybody. This design ventures off a bit from conventional anime figures and may not be to your personal taste. However, I think she is a must-get if you're a fan of Shuten Douji. So, do I have any complaints? I mean, yeah, sure, I can nitpick a little bit if you want. It's not uncommon in figures, but she really does have an optimal viewing angle. Like, turning her around does give you a better look at her sash, for instance, but her face looks much less flattering this way, and you'd be doing a huge disservice by displaying her like that. Her skin, as nice as it may look, doesn't have that like nice velvety peachy texture to it that other companies like to pull out, such as Max Factory or Spirit Tail. Not that you should really be touching your $200 figures, but she really did deserve a softer touch, and I was a little disappointed to find out that it's very standard in that way. As far as quality control goes, I did find one thing that does bother me, a small spot on her horn, just out of the normal viewing angle. So I don't have to see it, but like, come on man, you couldn't just give me this? It's a really small white spot on a glossy surface, so I ain't messing with it, but thankfully it's out of sight, so it's also out of mind. I guess one other thing that I did mention briefly earlier is that the bells by her legs make it very hard to remove the figure from her base. It's just sort of hard to get a solid grip down there if you ever need to take her off the base for whatever reason. QSQ is cornering the market on Shuten Douji. So far, they're 2 for 2 with a third on the way. Likely gonna cost an arm and a leg, but you can bet I'll be sacrificing a few limbs to get it if they keep this quality up. Fate isn't short on great character designs by any means, but we all end up gravitating towards specific characters. That's the beauty of such a large cast created by different artists. And boy, does it make me happy that QSQ is delivering such high quality sculpts for my favorite girl. While I would never argue against the third Ascension figure, I honestly think I might be more impressed with this one. All that metallic paint really needs to be seen in person to truly appreciate it, and those legs are just to die for. I don't have the Max Factory one, which is why I'm not including that in this conversation, but I'm sure that one's great too. Still looking for it. I really can't deny it though, this figure just caters to my taste perfectly. This really is a figure for me. Currently, she is still available at various locations, though shipping may be a little high, so take that into consideration. Let me know if you picked this figure up or plan to after watching this review. I would love to hear about it. Anyway, that's it for this one. If you want to support the channel, consider subscribing and liking the video. Maybe shop at one of my affiliate links down below. Whatever you do, much appreciated. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care. Later.